If you're a veterinary practice owner and you've ever looked at your bank balance and thought, we're busy, we're doing a lot of revenue, so why does this feel so stressful? You are not alone. I want you to start by normalizing, or I want to start by normalizing that feeling because I see it constantly. Most veterinary practice owners were never taught how to transition from being a great clinician to being a business owner. You were taught medicine, you were taught how to care for patients and clients. You were not taught how to structure money in a way that supports both the practice and your personal life long term. So, what happens is very human. Money starts flowing through the business, expenses get paid, payroll goes out, and you pay yourself however seems necessary in the moment. And because the lights stay on, it feels like it's working, but over time, that reactive approach starts to create friction. Stresses show up in cash flow. Your reports will stop making sense. You start questioning decisions that shouldn't feel that hard. Today's live training is about slowing that all the way down and understanding how veterinary practice owners should pay themselves, not from a rules-based perspective, but from a business clarity perspective. Because when owner pay is wrong, everything else feels harder than it needs to be. Give me just 1 second. I've got to make sure that this is working because Facebook gives me a hard time with these sometimes. Looks like it's going. So today what we're really talking about is clarity, not rules, not tax tricks, not squeezing every dollar out of your business. We're talking about how money should move between your practice and you in a way that makes the rest of your numbers make sense. When owner pay is structured correctly, cash flow becomes easier to read, decisions feel less emotional, and your reports start telling the truth. When it's not, everything downstream feels noisy and stressful, even if revenue looks fine. This is the foundation piece most practice owners skip, and it's why so many other fixes never quite stick. For those of you that are new here, I'm Cassie Sykes. I'm an enrolled agent and the founder of Greener Pastures Income Tax. I've spent more than 20 years working with business owners, and over time, I found my way almost entirely into the veterinary world. I work with veterinarians because the numbers behind vet practices are rarely simple and the stakes are personal. You're running a clinic, caring for patients, managing staff, and still trying to make sense of cash flow, taxes, and decisions that don't always come with clear answers. That's the space I live in with my clients. Being federally licensed by the U.S. Treasury means I can represent taxpayers in all 50 states, but what really matters is how that knowledge gets used. Most accountants focus on filing returns and staying compliant. I focus on what happens in between, how the money actually moves month to month, why cash can feel tight even in a busy practice, and how to build a financial structure that supports both the clinic and your life. That's what I help veterinarians do. Cut through the noise, understand what their numbers are really saying, and create a clear path forward without making things more complicated than they need to be. Owner pay is one of the most misunderstood concepts in veterinary practice, ownership, because it feels deceptively simple. Money leaves the business and goes to you. That feels straightforward. But what that money represents is what matters. Every dollar that comes out of your practice should have a reason for existing. It should answer a question. Is this paying you for labor? Is this a return on ownership? Is this reimbursing the business for something you paid personally? Or is this just moving money because it's there? For example, I'll often see an owner taking money out of the practice without knowing whether that money is paying them for working appointments, compensating them for managing the team, or simply pulling profit because it's available. On paper, all of that gets lumped together as owner draws, but financially, those are very different things. When those distinctions aren't clear, the reports can't tell you whether the practice is actually healthy. They just show activity. So as an owner, you're often doing multiple jobs inside the practice. You might be seeing appointments, covering emergencies, managing staff, handling vendor relationships, overseeing finances, and making long-term decisions all at once. Owner pay is not about lumping all of that together and hoping it averages out. It's about creating clarity around what the business actually costs to operate with you in it versus what it earns beyond that. When owner pay is done well, it gives you visibility. When it's done poorly, it hides problems or creates them. One of the biggest mental shifts veterinary practice owners have to make is this: how you pay yourself is not just about your household income. It is a business decision with business consequences. Owner pay directly affects how profitable your practice appears on paper, and profitability is not just a vanity metric. It affects your ability to benchmark against other clinics. It affects how lenders view your risk. It affects whether expansion decisions feel possible or terrifying. I often see practices that look unprofitable because owner pay is inflating expenses in a way that doesn't reflect reality. I also see practices that look incredibly profitable because the owner is quietly underpaying themselves and absorbing stress personally. In both cases, the financials are lying, just in opposite directions. If your reports don't reflect reality, you can't make confident decisions. You second guess hiring, you hesitate to raise prices, you delay investments that might actually help the practice, all because their numbers don't feel trustworthy. Owner pay is the hinge point between chaos and clarity. Most veterinary practice owners don't sit down and design a bad owner pay system. What happens instead is a slow drift. It starts with convenience. You pay personal expenses from the business because it's easier. You transfer money when you need it. You skip consistency because cash flow feels variable anyway. Over time, those small choices pile up. Eventually, you can't tell how much you actually make. You can't tell what the practice can truly support. And every financial conversation starts to feel emotional instead of analytical. This is where I see owners blaming themselves or blaming the practice when the real issue is structure. Without structure, everything feels personal. Slow months feel like failure, busy months feel fragile, and you're constantly reacting instead of planning. The goal is not perfection, the goal is intention. If you've ever had trouble answering questions like, how much do I actually make from this practice? Could the business afford to pay someone else to do what I do? Is this a good month or did I just delay paying myself? That's not a discipline issue, it's a structure issue. Understanding your role is one of the most important parts of this conversation, and it's where a lot of light bulbs go off. You are not just an owner, you are also often a working veterinarian and a manager. Each of these roles has a different purpose inside the business, and each one affects the numbers differently. When those roles are blended together financially, the practice can't tell its own story. You can't tell whether profit exists because of good systems or because you're overextending yourself. You can't tell whether the practice could survive without you working at the same pace. Separating roles, even conceptually, changes how you look at your practice. It moves you from asking, can I take money, to asking, what does this business sustainably support? That shift reduces anxiety and improves decision making almost immediately. When you don't separate those roles, profit becomes meaningless. You can't tell whether the business is profitable because it's well run or because you're personally absorbing workload, stress, or opportunity cost. That's why so many vet owners feel trapped. The practice looks successful, but it only works because they are holding it together. This is also where long term freedom starts. Because until your practice can stand on its own financially, it owns you more than you own it. One of the most immediate impacts of owner pay shows up in cash flow stress. When owner pay is reactive, the business absorbs all the pressure. Payroll weeks feel tense, vendor payments feel risky, unexpected expenses feel catastrophic. What's interesting is that many of these practices are not actually struggling. They're just unpredictable, and unpredictability is exhausting. I'll often see owners pull extra money during good months to make up for slower ones without realizing they're teaching the business to be inconsistent. The practice never builds a rhythm because owner pay changes every time cash flow does. That volatility is what creates anxiety, not necessarily low income. When owner pay is structured intentionally, cash flow becomes smoother, even if revenue doesn't change overnight. Predictability gives you room to breathe. It allows you to plan for slower seasons, make thoughtful investments, and stop riding the emotional roller coaster of the bank balance. This is where a lot of my owners will often tell me that nothing huge changed, but I feel calmer. That calm is not accidental, it comes from clarity. When owner pay is clean, your financials become usable. Profit becomes meaningful, trends become visible, benchmarks start to matter. You can finally answer questions like, is pricing actually working? Can I afford another doctor? Is this location performing or am I carrying it personally? What would happen if I stepped back? These are not theoretical questions. They are real decisions veterinary owners face. And without clean owner compensation, those decisions feel like guesses. This also matters for the future, whether that's expansion, partnership, or eventual sale. Clean owner pay makes your practice understandable to someone outside of it. And even if you never plan to sell, running your practice as if someone could review it tomorrow creates discipline today. If you take nothing else from this call, I want you to understand this. Feeling stressed about money does not mean your practice is failing. Very often, it means your owner pay structure hasn't caught up to the size and complexity of your clinic. This is fixable. It does not require blowing everything up. It requires understanding what's happening now and making intentional adjustments over time. This is exactly what I help veterinary practice owners do through profit and cash flow analysis. We don't just look at numbers, we look at how those numbers interact with your life, your workload, and your goals. If this resonated, stay with me. Join me live each week, ask questions. This is how you build a practice that supports you instead of draining you. If your practice feels financially stressful despite strong revenue, the issue is rarely effort or intelligence. It's usually that the owner pay hasn't been intentionally designed for the size of your clinic today, and until that's addressed, every other decision feels heavier than it should. Oh, sorry. Um, So if what we covered today highlighted any gaps, uncertainty, or even just a sense that things could feel more organized, that's completely normal. Most veterinarians aren't missing effort, they're missing clarity. The challenge isn't knowing more strategies, it's understanding how your income, personal finances, and cash flow actually work together in real life. If you want help applying this to your actual numbers, you can book a free profit and cash flow analysis. During that call, we'll walk through your income and cash flow, identify what's working, where money may be leaking, and map out clear, practical next steps. No pressure, no jargon, and no unnecessary digging into your practice books. This isn't about changing everything. It's about understanding what your current structure is actually telling you. You can grab a free time at the link on the slide, and I'll also drop it in the comments. Before you go, I want to share an incredible resource designed to elevate your veterinary practice's financial success. I've put together a free ebook just for you called 7 Financial Strategies. Inside it, you'll discover practical steps to increase profitability, improve cash flow, and make smarter financial decisions for your practice. You can grab your free copy in the comments. All right, that's it for today. If this helped, please pass it along to another vet owner who could use a clearer picture of their numbers. And if you're ready to get yours dialed in, go ahead and book that free profit and cash flow analysis. See you next week.